So obviously this morning things look a little bit different, right? It is our family ministry worship service, and what that means is it's an opportunity for us to share with you what family ministry means at Mauldin First. That's why in this room there are kids in the room. You've seen kids and teenagers on stage. You've seen kids singing in the back. Family ministry is an important part of what happens at Mauldin First Baptist. Here's the thing about family ministry here. It really is an opportunity for a legacy of faith to be passed on from one generation to the next generation. I remember the first time Aaron and I visited Mauldin First, that was one of the things that blew us away. We watched as senior adults loved on our little girl, and events like Legendary Night, I almost said Legacy Night, Legendary Night, Lily Beth would come in and be loved on by grandparent-aged folks, and she would be loved on by teenagers. And I asked Pastor Paula if she would to run some stats on how many senior adults are involved in family ministry here at Mauldin First. You ready for this? Legendary Nights, 41% of the volunteers are senior adults. 41%. Maybe if you've been a part of Mauldin First for a while, you don't realize this, but that's unheard of, by the way. Most churches, senior adults kind of take their time to get away and let other people serve. Here, it's quite the opposite. 41% a part of Legendary Night. Preschool and Children's Sunday School, 57% of those volunteers are senior adults. And in worship care preschool, 38% of the volunteers are senior adults. Can we do something this morning? We're celebrating families, but can we celebrate senior adults in the room who are sharing a legacy of faith with boys and girls? I know for our family, we're so excited to have people who have been down the road for my wife and I, people who have gone through what we've gone through. Paula and I talk about it on the regular. Is teenage life going to be like this forever? And she said, for a little while longer, and then we will conquer that hill. It's nice to have people who have been where we are, and for our little girl and son to be able to experience that. See, family ministry really is about building a faith that lasts, and that doesn't just happen at church. It just doesn't just happen in this room. It also happens at home. And so today what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk just a little bit on stage. I wanted to take a second just to really get to the heart of family ministry at Mauldin First Baptist and talk with Pastor Tori and Pastor Paula and Pastor Howie about their roles here at Mauldin First and really how that develops family ministry here. So I'm going to put them on the spot just a little bit and ask a few questions, and we're just going to have a conversation, and we're going to invite you guys to be a part of the conversation by participating as you listen this morning. And then at the end, we're going to wrap it up with a real-life story of a family who understands the importance of family ministry. And then Pastor Wade is going to wrap our day up together. So, Pastor Tori, we're going to start with you this morning.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's talk about student ministry as a whole and what students are facing. So here's the thing. Our 15-year-old uses words that I don't even know. I have to get them translated, literally open up Google to translate them. I just don't tell him. I pretend like I get it and then later Google it.
There's a guy on Instagram you can follow, too, that's really
Please
good.
hook me up.
I'll let you know.
That's why Pastor Tori's here.
Yep.
So let's talk just a little bit about what students are actually facing. I do think, Tori, like if you're removed from what they face and what they go through, which a lot of us are, we have no clue. That's why it's important for you to stay connected with them. So tell us a little bit about that.
One of the things we're seeing with young people nowadays is they seem to be really overstimulated. They're over-informed. It's one of those things where we've all got these devices that we're constantly scrolling through. Attention spans are shrinking. People are struggling to focus. And it's really evident within the young people, just seeing how even just doing a 20-minute discussion on Sunday nights for some of them are a little difficult, right, guys?
Not these guys.
No, not these on the front.
No.
They're doing great. But it's one of those things where we're seeing that constant stimulation is just causing major issues with behavioral things. It's causing depression, anxiety. And this is something talking to my teacher friends, counselors. My sister works for a counseling agency, and so like listening to some of them talk about stuff. It's just one of those things where we're seeing constant just that anxiety and depression happening because they're just overwhelmed. I mean, we're not meant, us adults aren't even meant to be taking in all this information, but yet, due to the development of, smartphones and all that, we're just constantly bombarded with information.
So, on that note, I'm sitting here thinking, so tell me how to do that with a 15-year-old. And I think that goes into our next question, which is, what role do you think we as parents play in guiding our children spiritually? I know we're talking about depression, anxiety, those issues that a lot of folks, not just teenagers, folks in society in general are facing. But how do we set our students up not to have to face that?
Well, one of the things, and this is one of the things we do as a youth ministry, is we try to create opportunities to just unwind. I warned them that this summer we're taking phones away at camp, so it's going to be fun to see how that goes. But we try to create opportunities to get them to just relax and to breathe a little bit and have fun together. And honestly, parents are the number one influence on their kids. Orange, if you guys are familiar with the Orange conference or people or whatever, they've got the little thing where you have all these marbles and there's just, you guys jar as parents of time you have with your kids is ginormous compared to the time we have with your kids. So really parents are the spiritual influence, and they really need to make sure they're taking that time to realize hey, I'm the one that is playing the largest part in my kid's life. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about is how can we help? What is it that we can do for parents, and with the potential of a discipleship pastor and all that stuff coming on board to help us out with that would be great as well. To go, how do we help you guys navigate these issues that the teens are struggling with, that you're struggling with, and what can we do to make it beneficial for you all and but have something that you're going to want to take the time to be a part of. Yeah. Because y'all's schedules are busy.
And I think having people like Pastor Tori who understand students, understand what they're going through, what they're facing that maybe we don't quite understand is helpful. And then also having other adults. That's why I think it's so important to have senior adults involved, like people who have been down the road further than Aaron and I have, people who can speak into those parts of life. Maybe cell phones weren't an issue, but I'm certain there were other issues that my parents dealt with my brother, not me.
I was going to say, Angel, right?
Not me, yeah, for sure. All right, Tori, if we said what is the one thing that we want students to walk away from Mauldin First Baptist Youth Ministry knowing, I think about it this way. On Pate, our 15-year-old's first day of college, we're not there anymore. We've done the best we could, and now we let him go. What is the one thing that you hope he walks away with?
One of the things that we try to really just impress upon the teens is that no matter how difficult it may seem, that following Christ is the most important, most beneficial, most rewarding, most difficult thing you will ever do in your life. And that no matter what the world throws at you and says, hey, you know what, this is going to be amazing, following what Christ wants is going to be so far more better than anything that this world has for you. Because God designed us He wants us to be the best that He created us to be, and the only way we can do that is by actually following Him and putting everything else aside. So that's the one thing that we really want them to understand, is that no matter what, no matter how difficult, it's totally worth following Christ and what He wants you to do for your life.
Can we do something that these guys weren't expecting us to do this morning? Can you guys give a hand to Pastor Tori and the student ministry at Mauldin First Baptist? Here's the thing, Tori. Maybe we should cut the live stream at this moment, but I asked our 15-year-old a few weeks ago, I said, so how's the student ministry? How's youth ministry? He said, Pastor Tori is the favorite youth pastor, the best youth pastor I've ever had. And so I say cut the stream, so maybe nobody else is watching. But that says a lot. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for how you invest in them. And what we know, Paula, it's your turn now, is that it has to begin when they're young. We begin pouring into kids as they begin their spiritual journey.
Sure.
As a former kids pastor, I just can't help it. It's one of the areas of ministry that I love so much. So let's start with this question. In your mind, in your heart, what makes a strong kids ministry? Like, how do we keep kids engaged now? Because as Pastor Tori's already said, I think I got my first phone when I started driving, and it was one of those flip phones that you could only use if absolutely necessary. Well, now, children have them, right?
Yes, they do.
So, how do we keep them engaged in church? How do we keep them engaged in spiritual things with all of the competition?
How do we keep them engaged? We put the phones away, as Pastor Tori said. We don't always do that, but it is a necessity at times to get their focus. Other than that, we do fun. I mean, we do fun. You come in, there's fun stuff, candy, cookies, a juice box, all sorts of great and fun things to attract them.
So now a lot of people in the room are now going to stop coming in here.
Yes,
They're gonna,
they'll have more
They
fun.
have cookies.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wade.
We got to
They'll
get
have
some.
more fun.
Who's in charge of cookies and juice? in
Yeah.
here?
You got to find them in the right place. Like, they're in the closet, ready to go.
Just to jump in on that, the whole fun aspect, a lot of people are going, well, you guys just have fun. That's your job. You just have fun.
No.
But people don't realize fun breaks down barriers and walls.
It does.
That then allows us to build relationships, that then allows us to pour into people's lives. I mean, my teacher friend went down the slip and slide the other day, and she laid on her floor for 2 hours when she got home because she was bruised, but she knew that by having fun with the kids, it broke down those walls, and now those kids that are coming into her class next semester, so there's an element that fun needs to be there.
It does. And it breaks down the walls. It engages them from the beginning. It's a time where kids are looking for something to follow. And your children will be discipled. They'll be discipled here in the church. They can be discipled at home and should be. Or they'll be discipled by the world.
100%.
So it is a time to invest in the children, to give them fun, to give them strong foundational Bible teaching, to bring in our experienced, loved, and seasoned volunteers. You know, while David was running the stats for the beginning about how many of you senior adults we have working in children's ministry, I ran some stats on children's Sunday school. If I combine the years of service for all of our children's Sunday school teachers, it's 95 years of teaching children. 95 years of experience raising their own children, working with the children of yesterday and the children of today, building the foundation, which is what children's ministry is all about. We want to build a faith foundation that your children can leave here for that trip to college and return to that foundation whenever needed. We want it to be so strong that all they have to do is touch it again and go on living in faith. We want them to follow Jesus with their lives. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work from us here, but we're really only the beginning. On a good week, your child will spend 3 hours in this building. The rest of those hours are spent in the world or at home. So that's a place, David, where I don't feel like we do as well as we could. And Pastor Tori was alluding to it. We need to better equip you. We need to give you everything you need to disciple your child at home. We need to give you love, support, and probably even some material things to make you comfortable in discipling your child. They will respond to that. They will respond to your leadership. They will follow your lead. My children are now having their own children and will often circle back and say thank you for laying this foundation. So, and it's worth it.
Paul, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Tori.
Yes.
When kids leave children's ministry, move into youth ministry. What is your hope that they walk away with what you just said?
My greatest hope is that they leave knowing Jesus, is that they leave knowing that they can follow him for the rest of their lives, that they are never alone, that they can depend and commit their lives to the Lord, and that it will make, as Pastor Tori said, all the difference in their lives.
I've often said, I don't think people are ever more like Jesus than when they're serving in children's ministry.
Agreed.
Why? Because they are helping people. Right now, in a preschool room, there's someone helping a child who can do nothing in return.
Correct.
Nothing. But they're still loving them, still faithful. Our little girl can say almost anything to me. She will be disciplined depending on what that thing is. But the love isn't going to change. That's the heart of Jesus. And for you and Pastor Tori, who live that day after day after day, Scripture is very clear to give honor to whom honor is due. Can you guys do exactly what we did for Pastor Tori? And let's thank Pastor Paul. So Pastor Howie has been quiet over on the side. But here's the thing. Family ministry also occurs in this room through worship on Sunday mornings. It also occurs as students, kids, tweens are involved in worship. And so Howie has the fun job of writing worship sets, communicating messages that hopefully communicate with all of us. In a multi-generational church, I am so thankful I don't have that job. But he does. So Pastor Howie, let's talk about what you hope a worship service communicates to the next generation, to a multi-generational audience.
Yeah, it's such a huge question, isn't it? Because when you probably think of what I do, it's all music related, and of course that's true. But I want to tell you a story. When I was a young, moldable heart growing, and if you're like me, I was raised in a very legalistic environment where there's lots of rules, lots of regulations, and I found very few true spiritual heart mentors. But I had an aunt, and some of you have met her. She lived with us for over 13 years. But early on, she demonstrated and modeled. I remember going to her house, and she had come out from the back room, and she comes out wiping tears from her eyes. And I thought, this is the strangest thing. You're an adult. Why are you crying? There's no funeral. There's no nothing. And I said, Aunt Lois, what's going on? And she goes, I just had the sweetest time with Jesus. And so my answer to that is the biggest gift that you can give your generations that are around you, whether they're older or younger, is to love Jesus. No matter whether the song you just heard was your favorite or you didn't like it or it was your favorite, we'll experience all of that. But to love Jesus, that's the legacy that you can pass on. And so if there's anything that I want to, that's authenticity, when you're in love with the person more than you are whatever vehicle we just used to show that love, whether it was, with drums or with organ or sedate or loud. We're in love with the person.
Pastor Tori, Pastor Paul, I think you can speak into this too, but you use the term authenticity. I think what teenagers and children actually want to see is authenticity. I did a lot of research on people who don't come to church a few years back, and was told this by one of them who was very unchurched, and he told me, he said, we who haven't been in church, we who do what we want all week long, and church isn't a priority, when we come to church, we can smell a fake. We can tell who's being fake and who's being real. And that's always stuck with me. So when you're talking about authenticity in worship, I think that's key. And unchurched people, but also teenagers and children can tell if it's authentic or not, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I can remember times during COVID that I'd come in and just be like, anybody else had a horrible week? Because I have. And we would just sit and be honest and open. And that's one of the things that I've always found with teenagers especially. That's one of the things, parents, like, if you can be open and honest with your kids, the more open and honest you can be, the more they're going to be open and honest with you. If you try to, like, hold I mean, obviously you can't tell them everything that's going on. But at the same time, like, be open with them. Be authentic, because that will, they can tell for sure.
So Howie, let's talk about that for just a second, the authenticity in worship music, but also, like, you do have the responsibility, I said it tongue in cheek, but you have the responsibility of selecting music that has biblical depth, but also it reaches a variety of different people and speaks to us in different ways. And as you said a moment ago, whether I like the song or not, it's speaking to someone, and they need that moment. So how do you do that? How do you begin to do that?
I pray. I pray.
He does.
You know, like we just sang Psalm 150, virtually a variation of it. And Psalm 150, so my answer is let Scripture be our guide. If the Psalm book is the Israel songbook, it also is our guide for framing the discussion. Psalm 150 is a one-note kind of psalm. It's praise. Praise this way, in dancing. Praise with the timbrel. Praise with the dance. Praise with that's really what it says. One thing, right? It's one color. But then you shift to like Psalm 136, which we did a couple weeks ago when we opened this bit. Like, it's very narrative. And then when you go to Psalm 73, which is a lament, there's lots of raw emotion. Or you go to Psalm 90, which is a lot of praise for God's attributes. Every psalm says praise or worship something slightly different. So the answer is letting Scripture be our guide, and sometimes praise and worship takes a different form. Sometimes it's sedate and heavy and lots of pathos. Anybody, we're here at Maundy Thursday, experience that. Or Easter, lots of joy, lots of celebration. That's because the Psalms have different expressions of that. So that's a little bit of my guide as I go forward, because worship should entail all of life, all the emotions that are part of that, from the highs and to the lows.
And so for the next generation, you would say the greatest thing that we can do is to teach them worship through example? Is that what you would say?
Through example and falling in love with the person, right, of Jesus Christ. Even if, like, I remember, go back to my Aunt Lois. I remember, this will date me, but I remember bringing her an album. Do you know what albums were back in the day? And I just got I had the Keith Green's album. His first, anybody a Keith Green fan out there? Yeah. So, like, you remember his first album? He had this huge head of hair. He was a hairy man. He's had this afro. He's got a full beard. And, if you're raised in a legalistic environment like me, that is not your, what shall I say, the shining example of what you were raised with. So I remember going to my aunt and saying, what do you think of this music? And I'd bring out the little liner of all the lyrics and say, what do you think of this? He goes, well, and I played it for her. He goes, it's not something I would listen to, but I love what it says here, 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 and here. So she reinforced the value of what I'm engaged with. So if you're an older generation, and believe it or not, I'm considered part of that older generation, the younger person need to be affirmed with what they're processing, with the truths that they're learning about God in their own way. So hopefully here in a multi-generational environment, you're going to hear all from 80 plus to 18 and younger. You're going to hear all kinds of different ways to express that.
And I think listening to that next generation, to the Gen Zers, listening to I would like to say that I understand what they've experienced. I mean, I've heard that my whole life. Yeah, we've been there too. We understand that. The answer is, I really don't understand the way that they are processing the world, the way that they're processing church, the way that they're processing worship. So I think what we have to do is we have to actually hear them, and then that may mean that we have to shift the way that we think about it. Aaron and I talk about it on the regular. God has us at Mauldin First, not for Mauldin First, but for us, to help us shift our thinking into what is God doing where we are with the people that we're with in a way that we haven't experienced before. And I think if we can pass that legacy on to children, to students, to our grandchildren, then imagine how it could shift their views of the church, and not just their views of the church, their views of Jesus, because it goes beyond this building, right? It goes out as they share Jesus with their friends and their family. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Paula. Ladies first.
We're talking all about it. Relationship is key to all that we do here, whether it's authenticity in our worship, authenticity in our ministry, what we do. It requires relationship, getting to know your children and their families, where they're living, what's happening to them out in the world, and engaging in that, both as friends, as church leaders, all of that. It requires that, and we're aware. We want to seek that relationship with all of your children. We do it here in the building. We do it outside at ball games and dance recitals and awards days and all kinds of things to invest in them and to encourage them in their ways, in a new way, the way the next generation might do it. And Howie's reference to the Psalms, I chose Psalm 78, 4 through 8, just as a backing for family ministry and what we do here. We will not hide them from the descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He has decreed statutes for Jacob and established law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach the children, so that the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. So that, for me, is where we are with children's ministry and all family ministry, really.
And to go back to something you were talking about, I think it's important for us to realize the importance of showing the young people what real Christianity is about. Because right now, you can go on TikTok and Instagram, and they're hearing what people think Christianity is, and that's shaping a whole lot of people's minds to being turned off to Christianity because they're being told, well, this is what Christians think. I think it's so important for us as spiritual leaders, as parents, being spiritual leaders, for you guys to demonstrate to your kids what true Christianity actually is, because they're not getting it in the world. And we got to do some brain adjustment and thought process adjustment.
Again, I think that emphasizes what I was saying a moment ago. We think we know, but we don't actually know how they are seeing the world and seeing Christianity. So we have to have those conversations. Will you guys also give a big hand to Howie and the work that he does? So the reason that we felt it was important for all three of these folks to be on this stage, all three of our pastors to be here today, is really to help us begin to understand that family ministry is not just a little side ministry of the church. It's not that little thing that happens on Sunday night or that thing that happens upstairs while we're in here doing real church. It's actually a vital part of what happens here as that legacy of faith continues to be passed on from one generation to the next. And here's the thing, y'all. All of us in this room, we all have stories of people who have passed on that legacy of faith. Mm-hmm. We all have stories that look different. Pastor Howie shared his story. Paula shared her story. Tori shared his story. I have a story. You have a story of maybe a grandmother or a parent or someone who taught you about Jesus or invited you to church. They were that annoying person that wouldn't stop until you finally came. And here you are.